if you go back 10 or 15 years, I think that was more or less a fair rap, that the Japanese quality was substantially better than some of the domestic products.
Okay, I'm a packager and I'm a parasite. And I'll be the first one to admit that, so are you. Because you do live on feedback.
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
You are looking at the city of Atlanta. In the foreground is the Fulton County Stadium, home to the Atlanta Braves and the Falcons. Hello everybody. Yes, this week we're in the deep south of the USA, Atlanta, Georgia, soon to be home for the 1996 Summer Olympics. And you know, Atlanta is also home to what many call the #1 producing car manufacturing plant in North America. It's run by the Ford Motor Company. And you know, Ford, like the rest of the domestic industry, has been going through some tough, lean times. And the reason, for the most part, of course, has been the Japanese industry. And there was a day when many felt if you just ignore them, the Japanese would go away. Well, they didn't. And what we've discovered here in Atlanta is that as we head into the 90s, the Ford Motor Company is a company in a fighting mood.
It may not be fair that you have a wide number of products as opposed to, let's say, Honda, which doesn't. But the fact is that you're dealing with them head-to-head in the mid-size market. Can you afford to continue to deal with them head-to-head on full-size in the mid-size market and not match them change for change?
Well, we have to let the customer decide, and if we look at the Taurus and Sable, which I think is maybe right down to the specific question, how could you account for the Taurus and Sable having a record share in the 5th year of its life? The customers are very satisfied with the pace of change on the Taurus and Sable. They love the car.
Alex Trotman, Executive Vice President of Ford's North American Automotive Operations, recently faced over 200 journalists at Ford's Atlanta assembly plant. They had been invited to view the 1992 Taurus and Mercury Sable. But at a news conference, the topic of conversation was Ford's ability to survive the Japanese competition and a slumping economy.
We're not apologizing for the length of life on the Taurus and Sable. We don't need to apologize to our customers. They're very pleased with what we've done. Our research says they're going to be very, very pleased with the 92. Some factories are going to close. Some nameplates probably are going to go away. Some companies are probably going to go belly up. But how we fit into it is we're going to emerge very strongly through this decade, and we won't do any of those nasty things that I just enumerated. We are in a fighting mood, and a competitive mood maybe is an even better word. We aim to be the best at what we do in our business worldwide with our new products and our customer services and our manufacturing processes. Our 92 program is $5.6 billion worth of new products starting right now, the products we're looking at this week. And the 92 Ford Taurus and Mercury Sable are a very major element of that product blitz.
The Ford Atlanta plant is considered the most productive in North America. Plant manager Bob Anderson explains.
Well, there's a Jim Harbour annual report that comes out, and a once-in-a-lifetime kind of report that this MIT study validated the Harbour report. And it's based on the number of man-hours it takes to produce a car. The Harbour report, which is now over a year old, said that we were building a car for 17 hours. And the next closest plant was almost a full hour away from that target. Yeah, we are in a fighting mood, and we're challenging them. And in some of our products, we've already met them. Others, we've got some distance to go, but we're benchmarking them with the idea of leapfrogging, not just catching them, but leapfrogging. The hourly people here in this plant are probably more aware of the competitive nature of our business than anywhere else that I know of.
The industry is running at 13 million, I hope, for this year of new car and truck sales in the United States, which is a very low year. That's compared to 14.1 million units last year, which was a weak year. So from the standpoint of total sales, yeah, we're in a deep recession, maybe even a depression in some parts of our business, that's right. But the people in our company, I would characterize our mood as very upbeat, very durable, tough mindset. A very competitive bunch of people.
From a technical perspective, the multi-link design adopted in this car keeps the camber and toe variations to a minimum, giving the car a stable, precise feel under most conditions.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the Mazda 929, which is also now known as the Serenia. The last time I tested this vehicle, I pointed out how boring I thought the styling was. This time around, it's anything but.
The Mazda's fully independent suspension is geared towards giving maximum comfort rather than handling characteristics. On the road, be it highway or round town, the setup absorbs road irregularities extremely well. During the pylon test, the car displayed some body roll and begins to lose some of its composure when nearing the limit. Now, this is not a criticism because we're talking about a luxury car here. From a technical perspective, the multi-link design adopted in this car keeps the camber and toe variations to a minimum, giving the car a stable, precise feel under most conditions. Under the hood is a 3-litre 24-valve quad-cam V6 that produces a healthy 195 horses and 220 pounds-feet of torque. The beauty of this engine is that maximum torque is generated at a relatively low 3,500 RPM. Now this equates to good mid-range performance. On the skid pad we required 10 seconds to reach the 100k mark. This fairly leisurely pace can be attributed to a poor power-to-weight ratio. Simply put, the car is heavy. 3,600 pounds heavy, making initial oomph very slow. A little more power would work wonders here. Matched with this engine is an electronically controlled 4-speed automatic transmission. It can select either of two modes. Trump the gas pedal and it selects the power mode. It automatically reverts back to the normal mode as soon as conditions permit. This improves fuel economy. On the side of the gear selector is a hold button. When activated, the hold mode keeps the transmission in a lower gear. This is a handy feature when in hilly terrain or towing a trailer. The interior of the 929 is as pleasant as the outside is pleasing to look at. Thanks to an extra 6 inches inserted into the wheelbase, the car is very roomy, offering ample head and leg room in all positions. The trade-off comes in trunk size. It is small for a car of this class. The lift-over is cut to bumper level and the deck lid opens wide to allow easy access to items stored here. There is a small cubby hole behind a panel that houses a massive amplifier. This amplifier powers a terrific 12-speaker sound system complete with a CD player. The dash is complete and, thank goodness, analog in design. Even the clock has real hands, a rarity in today's cars. Ergonomically, the controls are laid out in good fashion, with everything being easily reached, read and operated. There is no glove box in this car, the reason being they have provided a passenger side airbag, a worthwhile trade-off in my view. Aside from that, the car offers a complete complement of comfort and convenience features right down to the steering wheel mounted volume controls for the radio.
This sunroof is in actual fact a solar panel that's used to keep the interior of the car cool. Contradiction in terms, you may think. Not so. The electricity created is used to drive a couple of fans in the trunk area. This in turn circulates air within the car, keeping the ambient temperature down. If you've parked your car on a hot summer day for a couple of hours, you'll know just how hot and sticky the interior of the car can actually become. Using this sunroof to keep the car cool may just be the solution to a very sticky problem.
One further point of interest on the sunroof is the fact that once the interior temperature has been brought down, the power generated by the roof is used to ensure the battery remains fully charged. The new 929 features a 4-wheel disc brake system with computer-controlled ABS. During the brake test, we averaged stopping distances of 117 feet from 80k. The Mazda setup is the equal of any tested. The stops were always strong, fade-free and easily controlled. A point worthy of mention is that the pedal allows the driver to generate maximum braking without activating the system. If the system is activated, there is also minimal pedal pulsation.
This cheap black plastic piece makes my pet peeve on the 929. Throughout the rest of the vehicle, they've got very well color-coordinated panels, a very nice sumptuous leather interior, and stuck slap bang in the middle is this ugly plastic piece. Even fake wood would have looked a little better, and given the price, I think they can surely afford it. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Mazda 929.
The new 929 displayed a distinct bias towards comfort during the pylon test. While the amount of body roll is fairly well controlled, the car did begin to protest when pushed. Mind you, the whole setup is not out of place on a luxury automobile. Despite the 195 horses and ample access to torque at fairly low RPMs, the 929 feels sluggish and lacked the crispness I expected. We required almost 10 seconds to eclipse the 100k mark. Another superb ABS system that yielded a terrific set of results from the brake test. At an average of 117 feet to stop from 80k, the stops always felt strong and precise. The supple suspension and supportive seats provide a very congenial ride. Wind and road noise are kept to an acceptable limit, and engine noise is only apparent at wide open throttle. The 929 is a fairly thirsty car. During the test, we averaged 13.5 litres per 100 kilometres, or 21 miles per gallon. The new 929 is a very elegant automobile that offers all the luxury and sophistication anyone could want. The only thing it needs is another couple of horses under the hood. With that, Mazda will have a well-rounded and highly desirable car.
Somebody once called this car a wolf in a sheep's clothing. Now, at first glance, it looks like a Ford Taurus. Well, it is. 1992 Ford Taurus. But this is the SHO model. You know how you can tell? You look under the hood. 3 liters, 24 valves, 220 horsepower. And as you might guess, this car packs a lot of punch. All right, it's now time to head to the garage and join our favorite mechanic, Bill Gardner. Let's see what he's up to this week.
You know, if you're maintaining your car on a year-round basis, there may not be a whole lot of items under the hood that need attention for a winterizing job, but there's certainly going to be at least 2 or 3 areas on the exterior of the car that need your attention before the wintertime. That's what we want to talk about this week. Wiper and washer systems are one of the most important because vision is so important. Now we can see that this car has what's referred to as a winter-style wiper blade, and this one has failed. It's broken inside down in there. Personally, I don't like these kind of wiper blades, but a lot of drivers really seem to like them. So if you have this style of wiper blade, I'd recommend that you restrict it only to winter use and you change back to a regular blade in the summer. This one is almost, well, it's stiff as a rock here at this end, and this end's broken. So this one needs to be replaced. It won't work properly in the wintertime. The blade that I prefer is a tubular stainless steel blade like this one. It's a very durable blade, and it won't crack or break like plastic blades will in the wintertime. You can see that it's very flexible and it will conform to windshield shapes very easily. It's also an easy blade to refill. The cartridge just pops out and you can buy a new set of rubber refills for about $7 or $8 to refill those blades annually so that you have excellent wiper performance. Washer pumps are also very, very important because you don't want to get into a whiteout condition where road spray from another car can't be rinsed off your windshield. Now a little pump like this is a universal washer pump that will replace the pump on just about any car made today, and there's a set of T's with it and lines and electrical connections, and it can be retrofitted to just about anything on the road today. You'll find that some of today's cars have very expensive mechanical washer pumps that just don't work all that well, and they're very costly, $60 or $70 sometimes just for the parts. So a little unit like this is about $25, and it actually works better than some of the original systems. Another item that's very important to check is tires. You want to make sure that your tires are in good condition and the proper type of tire for the winter time. If you're around town, mostly in the city, and you don't have to drive in adverse conditions, an all-season tire may be all that's required. But if you're thinking about being mobile out of town and going to the ski hills and things like this in the weekend, you may want to have 4 snow tires on your car. That's the absolute best way to handle wintertime from a tire standpoint. And make sure that you're checking your tire pressures regularly, because with dropping temperatures, tire pressure will drop even if you don't have any leaks. Tires are also more prone to rim leakage in the wintertime, so it's important to check those tires at least monthly to balance out the pressures. Another item that we want to talk about is lighting systems, and it's very important that your lighting systems are all working properly. For example, these little side marker lamps here. A lot of people think that these are just reflectors because in many cases all 4 of them are burned out on their cars, but they're actually backlit with a small bulb. And this little side marker is really important because the odd time when you have to stick your nose out a little bit too far to merge in at a crossroads, you may stick the front of your car out, just hanging out a little bit too far, and another driver will be able to spot that if this lamp's working, and he'll dodge around you. If he can't see you, he might clip the front right off your car. Now, headlights are also very, very important, and I'm going to suggest to you today that if you don't see this word halogen written somewhere on your headlight bulb, that even if your headlights are working, I'd throw them out, because these halogen seal beams are much, much brighter, about 50% brighter than any other standard light. And it's a better, whiter, sharper light that you get out of these units, and they're also easier to aim, and they're not very costly. So if you've got the old style bulbs, just replace them. It's also very important to have these headlights aimed properly. We'd use a unit something like this. You can see one attached on the far side of the car. Now this is something that we'd use inside the shop. We wouldn't use it out here in the parking lot like we are today, because this unit has to be leveled off against the shop floor. But a unit like this clips to the front of the headlight, and we can aim the headlight vertically and horizontally to get the lights focused properly. And of course, vision is so important to safe winter driving. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
Well, that's right. It's Reaming Yale trivia time. And 9 minutes to go until 9 o'clock in the morning on Country 101. Here we go. And here we are today, the culmination of our season here. Points finished last week. This is a 35-lap contest for NASCAR lead models. Qualification-wise, the way they finished up, Terry Clattenburg, the number 1 qualifier, Bob.
You are looking at the #1 road racing track in the southeastern United States. This is Road Atlanta. It's about an hour's drive out of the city, and later on we're going out on this track with one of NASCAR's #1 drivers, so stick around. But first, we're going to head to the east coast of Canada and meet the voice of maritime racing. Here's Steve Grant with that story.
How you doing, Bill?
Not too bad,
You got over last night, did you?
I sure did.
Okay.
Wonderful time.
How's the charming missus this morning?
She's doing well.
If you live in the Halifax area, you are no doubt familiar with this voice. For the past 12 years, Ken Packham has held down the #1 morning show in this town. That's a feat in itself, but all the more impressive when you take into account his other pursuits.
Take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And I want you to know there was some heavy thrashing going on down at the pits.
The morning show isn't the only announcing that Ken Packham does. For most track fans in Halifax, if not all track fans, that's how they know Ken Packham. That's the track announcer for the NASCAR Stock Car Series.
More trouble for the 27 of Glenn Brown.
It's funny because, like, motorsports or racing in general has really given me my career and my livelihood. I started out racing cars, and I know when we used to run in Niagara Falls, New York. You remember when you were a little fellow, all the Sunday Niagara, you felt guilty if you weren't there. I mean, even if you didn't have a car, you went if you had to walk. Probably from a track announcer standpoint, I'm not the first one that came to the realization that motorsports is a misnomer. Not motorsports at all. Sports doesn't enter into it, and I think you'll agree with me. This is showbiz, gang, and it has been for a long time. And why is it that? Well, it's that because you're trying to get the ordinary, everyday person, be male or female, doesn't matter, to go out there and spend the money to come into a race facility that they are going to spend on video rentals, going to the show, going to a bar, whatever, okay? That's the money you've got to access. So that's entertainment money. And so if they go to a facility and they come away from there entertained, and they said, hey, I had a good time, then you're doing your job. To know that a guy is running a 355 cubic inch engine and that he's gone from a flat tappet camshaft to a roller camshaft and all that, that's important. Because there's a certain segment of people that want to know what a guy's running. But they were the only ones that went to the races years ago. This is a big, growing Hollywood is what it is, basically, really.
Well, he grew up with cars. When other kids were playing with other things, he would be going to take a bread crust and go back across on his high chair when he wasn't big enough to, eat anywhere else. And I guess he listened to me talk cars all his life. And when he quit school, he came into the garage with us.
My dad wasn't a racer, but my dad was a Studebaker dealer, of course, and just a crackerjack of a mechanic. Probably the best diagnostic mechanic, natural, that I've ever met. And he always had a good feel for equipment. I don't ever remember him being the last one away from a stoplight. And they used to have stoplights in the Queen Elizabeth Highway years ago, going down to Niagara Falls. So it was always a contest whenever you got to one of those and it turned yellow.
Ken eventually went on to become a pretty successful drag racer. car accident away from the track more or less ended that career. However, when he met his wife Brenda, he convinced her that she could race. And he was right.
The first year that I drove was our family Jimmy, and I drove in the street bracket, won the championship that year, and it was the first time any woman had ever won east of Montreal.
Now Brenda spends most of her time with GT Magazine, where hubby Ken is editor, publisher, director of marketing, and head photographer. And in between his radio show, his track announcing, and GT Magazine, there's Ken's Garage, a weekly cable TV show that Ken hosts from where else?
We're going to turn this front towards you now. So there's a whole lot of neat things, and everybody said, why don't you just give up one or two of the things that you don't really like to do, because it'd be a lot easier. And I have a problem, because I don't have anything that I don't like to do.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
I'm always telling people how great it is to drive in Germany. And it's not just because they don't have any speed limits on some of their autobahns, but it's the way they drive. Frankly, I feel more confident doing 160 kilometers an hour in Germany than I do at 100K over here. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. The other day in Munich, I was caught up in construction traffic, and I had to move from my lane into the next lane over. A taxi was right beside me, and he honked and waved me in because it was my turn. A taxi! In another instance, I'm coming upon a traffic jam on the Autobahn. As usual, I get on the brakes hard, put my four-way flashers on, and check my rearview mirror to make sure people behind me have got the news. To my surprise, there are cars 200 yards behind me that have already got their four-way flashers on. These people pay attention. I'm not off the airplane 5 minutes, driving home from the airport, and I see this dude in a 1975 Lincoln Town Car about the size of Prince Edward Island, and he's got this thing aimed in the general direction of Winnipeg. The lane markings are mere decoration for this guy. One of the several cars he almost ran into the guardrail was being driven by some other jerk who had his one hand on the wheel, reaching down into the passenger footwell for something or other. I can't imagine what would be so valuable that he'd risk a collision at 100 kilometers an hour on a busy highway. So folks, come on. 2 hands on the wheel. Keep your eyes open, particularly watch what's going on behind you. I don't expect we'll ever get a chance to drive 160 kilometers an hour in this country, but there's still a lot of things we can learn from German drivers. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, we've run out of time for this week, but I think we have saved the best for last. At least I think you racing fans will agree with me. Joining me right now is veteran NASCAR driver Bill Elliott. And Bill, you are going to take us out in this Ford SHO. Is that what they tell me here at Road Atlanta?
That's correct. I'll probably run 130, 140, but we'll see what you think about the ride when we come back.
Any advice? Just hang on maybe? Or?
Just hang on and tell me what I do wrong.
Right. Okay, that's still to come, but we'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.